So Monday, June 11th, 2018. I get up, start my day. Kristen and my wife Kristen took Cameron. They had some sort of appointment somewhere, and I went to work and went in and sat down. Booted up my computer. Everything seemed like it would be just the start of a normal week. And then the phone rang. Kristen was calling me, which is unusual. So I answered it, and she was crying and told me that she'd just gotten a call from our son Scotty's roommate out in Utah telling us that he had passed away. And that started probably one of the worst stretches of my life here that we're still working through. So today, figured we'd talk a bit about my son Scotty, his life, his death, and somewhat went into that. So it's going to be a different sort of show here from what we normally do, and not going to be quite the normal approach that we take. But as always, I'm here with Steve, and he's going to help me through this here, and we're going to do the other show and see how this goes as we talk about and remember Scotty.
Yeah, so for anybody watching, it's going to be a very sort of heavy show. So if that's not what you're in for right now, or if you can't really handle that, that's completely fine. You don't have to watch it, or you can watch it later if you feel like watching it. But yeah, this is going to be a very open sort of show. We're not going to do any of the usual stuff that we do for this show. This is mostly for Christopher and for anyone who needs it, anyone who has gone through something similar. Yeah. So just a heads up, everybody. It's not going to be, we're not even. I mean, you can debate whether often we're not funny anyway, but we're not even going to try for this show. So
yeah, we're not worried about where Pierre is. We're not doing the 5 minutes of Trump. We're not going to wrap up talking about Batman for 45 minutes.
No,
this is sort of a one subject show here.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess. Did you want to start with that day, or did you want to talk about Scotty first, or what?
I'll start, I guess, at the beginning, which sort of is the end too, because it's the story that I told at the funeral service. That Scotty actually impressed me before I even met him, because when I met Kristen, she has 5 kids from her previous marriage. One's already off at college, but there were 4 kids, elementary school age, living living together. And the decision was made. We wanted. I'd been seeing Kristen, but we hadn't met the kids yet, and we wanted to do that in a way where I wasn't going to be the sole subject of interest for 4 elementary school kids. Try to. So they struck upon the idea of having a small party. We had 2 or 3 other families over. Kristen invited a bunch of people over, and we had other families, some other kids, and I was there. But there was a lot going on, so I wasn't the only person who was new to the location. Sort of easing me in, which was I thought a very good way to go out. That was Steph's idea, actually. And but when at that party, Scotty spent a lot of time sort of eyeing me speculatively, trying to figure out. But he had impressed me because somehow he always knew that I had been there, because they would all be at school. I would I'd come in, I'd see Kristen for all, we'd talk a bit, spend some time together. I'd leave, and then first time I did that and went home, and then Kristen called me later in the day and said, not long after I got home, Scotty was like, "Was someone here?" Yeah. And then second time I came over and spent some time and left, and then so it's like, was Christopher here again? And every time
he could just tell.
Yeah, he could. And every time I visited, he would ask. It was every time. One time, after a half dozen or more visits, I was talking with Kristen on the phone later that day, and she didn't mention it. I was waiting for it. She didn't mention it. And I'm like, okay, I guess, did Scotty notice this time? She's like, oh, yeah, he noticed. He asked me right away. He was so good at it, it wasn't even noteworthy anymore. He always knew, and I never figured out how. Don't know how. Never will now.
Yeah.
But somehow he just, so he was very observant, knew that right up front. And yeah, so that's how I met all of the other kids except the oldest Jen, who was out at college on her own at that point already. But time went by. Chris and I bought the house together that we're still in. We eventually got married. You remember, you were there.
I was there. Yes.
That's the last time we were ever in the same place at the same time.
I know. And I remember I was thinking about that the other day when we were talking about doing this show. And I remember when I first got to the house, when I arrived, I guess I was the first like wedding guest to get there. I was way early.
And I wasn't there because we were getting the vegetable trays at Wegmans, I think.
Yeah. And weren't you and Scotty getting them? Weren't you and Scotty out?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's what I thought. I was trying to. I don't have a perfect memory, but I think that I know, but you lived it, and I was just, I think you and Scotty were out at the grocery store or wherever, and you guys came back together, and that was when I met him, and that's the only weekend I ever got to spend with him. So sadly I don't have a very strong impression of him, but yeah, that was that was as soon as I heard the news, that was the first thing I thought of, was you guys coming back from the grocery store the day of your wedding. And
the only time you ever met him.
The only time I ever met him. Yeah.
So that's what you would remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got in here and Scotty, he didn't, the first year in the school, he was in 8th grade. The kids at that point were 8th, 6th, 4th, and 2nd grade. And Scotty was at 8th grade, and he didn't enjoy it that much. He was having some trouble with the new school. Where they were before was, I guess that was near Bucknell University, I think. And so there's a lot of money in the district because of the college. And so they had a strong anti-bullying campaign, and they worked at it like right from the beginning. Like they genuinely had projects in place, programs in place to address that and try to prevent it early. So coming to Pittsburgh is a bit of a culture shock, where they do the normal lie. The biggest lie they tell in school is bullying will not be tolerated.
Sure.
And so there's a bit of a shock with that. And he got through the year, but he wasn't real thrilled with it. So he didn't want to go into the high school, and eventually struck on the idea of doing an online school, which Pittston area didn't have an online program at that point, but he was doing an online school, which I wasn't entirely sold on. But he was just struggling with kids at school, and he could do better this way, then why not? Well, it turns out Scotty was the sort of person who in many cases did not do anything until the deadline was crashing down on him, and the school did not press real hard as far as the schoolwork. As long as it was done by the end of the semester, you were good. So that meant that in many cases, like he had this tendency to wait until like 48 hours before the semester was over, and then try to do the entire semester's work in that 48 hours.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, so that was 2 years of that, and just basically scraping by, because when you do stuff like that, you're not going to do especially well, as you might imagine. It's a struggle there. And so then came so going into 11th grade, there was a new option, because I used to when Kristen, before she left her previous husband, she had been living up near Lake Wallenpaupack, and kids still had friends up there. There was a family friend named Jody who had a son who was Scotty's age, and they were really good friends. Even when Scotty was in the online school, he'd be online on the Xbox or on Minecraft or something with this friend of his up until 2, 3 in the morning, whatever, playing games or whatever.
Yeah.
And Jody, her name, she had said she had talked about how Scotty was like a second, like another son to her, and stood in the kitchen and said, anytime you want to have him up there, we're happy to have him. Was very open about it. And so we discussed sending him to Wallenpaupack area, having him go up and basically live with Jody, with his friend, and attend the other school, which And I'll be honest, at that point, I thought that was a better idea than the online school. I wasn't entirely sold with the online school, but being in an actual school and with friends, with somebody, looking out for them and so on, and having the social aspect again instead of hiding in the room all the time, because that's something you really lose with online school, the social aspect. And, it can be, the social aspect can be tough, with bullying, with kids who are problems and so on. But still, spending all your time for an entire year stuck in your room by yourself is not really good either.
No.
So actually, I was pretty supportive of this. So he went up there, and I guess I don't remember the exact timelines on this, but I understand like the first 2 quarters, first semester, whatever, he was doing really good, with the more structured approach that school has. You can't put off your homework to the end of the quarter or semester or whatever it is. So he was keeping up. He was doing really well. And then I don't know exactly what the order of operations were here, but in a fairly short period of time, he was introduced to drugs. Somehow it's a big issue in the Poconos. And he met Michelle, who was his girlfriend for quite a while. And his grades all started to slip because he was starting to pay less attention to school and more to the other things. And how he got introduced to the drugs, there's different things, and I don't know for certain. I don't want to toss out anything that might not actually be, accurate. Trying to be careful with the speculative stuff. But while he was up there, he got introduced to this and started getting into, we didn't know necessarily what the situation was. Jody was not keeping us in the loop real well. She was not thrilled with Michelle. Apparently, Scotty overheard Jody talking to her husband, saying something about how she didn't think Michelle was good for him. And, the teenage mindset, you immediately put a wall up and nothing they say matters anymore because they disagreed with you on something and said something you didn't want to hear.
Right, exactly.
And we really didn't get much in the way. We'd hear that he was out till odd hours or would stay over other people's house and not come back, but we weren't getting a lot of feedback from Jody on what was going on until one day where Kristen gets a message saying that there's a warrant out for his arrest for drugs, and she's worried about her own family and basically was kicking him out. He was, I think, at school, and she took a bunch of his stuff and put it on the porch and said that he wasn't even allowed back in the house.
Wow.
Yeah. Just out of the blue, bam, kicked him out of the house. Now, the part that really frustrates about this is that we didn't get any feedback leading up to this. There was no, things are getting bad. There was no, look, this needs to be addressed, or I'm going to say he's not welcome here anymore because this is getting out of hand. There was nothing. Just out of the blue, bam, he's out of the house. And I forget if he was in his senior year at that point. I think he was. And at that point, he didn't want to leave his friends up there. He didn't want to leave Michelle. He didn't want to come back to Pittston area and graduate from a school that he's only going to be in for a couple of months here at the end of the year.
Right.
So this is kind of a tough situation. He ended up moving in with Michelle and her father. And that was okay for a little while. And then I think he was getting sort of frustrated with how they were living in this talk about they were going to have to find someone else. But then Michelle's father died. He'd been in an accident. I don't remember all the details. I think he'd been in an accident not too long before. Not sure what happened. He might have thrown a blood clot or something. But basically, he collapsed and passed away very, just all at once, completely out of the blue.
Yeah. And
here's where things start to get ugly. We'll just say that Michelle's father seemed rational and reasonable and was willing to work with people. And the impression we got from her mother is that she wasn't. Yeah. But he had a life insurance policy. And they got like $125,000. And well, that's a significant chunk of money. I mean, what could you do with 125,000?
Oh, the mind swims at the possibilities. Yeah.
I mean, it's a terrible circumstance that you get money through a life insurance policy, but
Yeah.
that much money I could have paid off the house and the credit cards, and if I don't have those bills, suddenly I'm doing very, very well.
Right. Exactly.
For
It's a huge
them, I
amount.
mean, yeah, for them, that's money. They could get a starter house, get started back at college, try try to get started with education, and because Scotty he ended up not finishing high school there. He ended up going back to an online school and scraping out a degree just barely. But $125,000 in 10 months, it was gone.
Wow.
Because they're 18 years old and they don't make great decisions, and they were addicts.
Yeah.
And so money disappears into the drugs.
Well, yeah, and when you start with a huge pile of money like that, you figure it's going to last forever.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even notice when you're taking from it at first. You don't even notice that it's any smaller because it's such a big pile. And then before you know it, where'd all the money go?
Right. So, I mean, there was a whole bunch of things that happened. I mean, they had gotten a car, and they didn't go for any normal car. They went for a bright red, souped-up Ford Mustang that wasn't even – it was a show car.
Yeah.
The previous owner used it as a show car. They drive it to shows. It had, the battery was in the trunk, and there was a separate handle for it. They came by our house around dusk one day and showed it to us. They were showing off. They were so proud of it. And they drove off. Chris and I looked at each other like, they're going to die. The car, I think, lasted nearly 3 weeks before they totaled it. I mean, I don't even know what to say. The reportedly, she was driving it somewhere around 60 miles an hour on an unpaved road and lost control. So,
jeez.
Yeah. So the car was smashed up, and I mean, the engine still worked. The frame was shot, but the engine still worked. It's a long story, but it sat in the impound lot for months, and there were thousands of dollars of bills for that. Then they got it out and took it to, I guess it was at their house for a while, because we'll get to this later. They rented a place that was there for a while, and eventually it got sold to another member of the family who was going to pull the engine and put it in something else. So they did eventually get that worked out, but it took over a year. It took a long time.
Yeah.
But at one point, with things going bad and Michelle's father dying, they had asked about moving in with us. And that was a hard one, how that one ended up working out, because you don't want to tell your kid no. You don't want to say you're on your own. But at the same time, that's when we were leaning towards saying yes, actually, and having very firm rules about behavior, what was in the house, and having to get jobs
Right.
and so on, and having some solid rules down for it. But we're talking with other family members who are doing some checking on things, and found that a news article about having been in trouble for drugs, and they throw every charge they can at you so that you can clear some of them and do the lesser ones,
Right.
So they were throwing, at least one was I don't know, drug distribution. It was a felony that you can clear easily enough if you show up at court with a lawyer to do it.
Right.
Which he didn't.
Yeah.
And we were finding this, and we realized that we weren't comfortable with the possibility of bringing all of this into the house. And I mean, we thought about Scotty, but not Michelle, but they weren't going to split up at that point, so that wasn't going to work. So that did not happen. But they did eventually. They rented they came back to us a little bit later and asked for help with leasing a place, getting a rental, which we were a bit more okay with. That rabbit hole turned out to be they. I'm trying to figure out how to go about this. Kristen had to co-sign for the lease because you need someone to under the survey they need someone to co-sign for it, and Kristen agreed. And it was after that we found out just how bad the drug situation was, because we were sort of in a sort of blissful ignorance, I guess, to some extent. We knew it wasn't good, but we didn't know how bad it was. They, in the time that they lived there, never got furniture.
Jeez.
I guess they had a mattress or something, but you know how you have the stereotypes if you walk into a house and it's like a drug den or something, is drug. There's certain stereotypes of what the house looked like.
Yeah.
It kind of fit. I mean, there might have been sheets or blankets over some of the windows, but there were no curtains. There was no furniture, no sofa, no chairs, no kitchen table. They had mattress and box spring, but no bed. And it was every time we walked into that house, the heart broke a little bit more. Because Kristen was on the lease, so she had a key as well. So we'd go up, we try to check on things, check on them. Sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. It was, and we knew that conditions were getting worse. See, Scotty's condition was not good. He did go into rehab at one point, somewhere around December, I think. After Thanksgiving, he went into a rehab and he flew down to Florida. I remember talking with him and giving him some basic pointers on airports because he'd never flown before. And the airport up here is a tiny one. You start here or you end here. It's not a hub. I think it's got a grand total of 5 gates. Like 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 2C. So there's 5 gates total.
It's technically an airport.
Yeah. So he flew down there and which wasn't going especially well. It's a for-profit one, and he was only doing it because he had to avoid the jail. Yeah. And he was down there for a little while, and then I guess there was some other death in Michelle's family, and he decided to leave early and come back up for that. And, that was, but he went into rehab for the wrong reasons. He didn't go in because he wanted to get better. He went in because he's trying to avoid jail. And so that's not the way you do that. Yeah. Probably one of the lowest ebbs was the last time you were at the house before they were evicted. We went over at night, and the house was in worse shape. I guess with the Christmas, he went after Thanksgiving, came back around Christmas. They went out to Staten Island, I guess, for whatever the situation was out there, and they bought another car. I guess it was a BMW that I never saw because something happened. It was stuck out there in Staten Island, and they couldn't get back. And we ended up going there because they had 2 cats. Yeah. And there was, I think Michelle's sister, some friend took them because no one was taking care of the cats in the house. They were like chewing through plastic bags to get at food. Jesus. Yeah, and so we brought like whoever, Humane Society, whatever, to come in, to help, confirm condition. The cats were okay and were going to somewhere they'd be okay. So the last time that we were over there before they moved out, I think it was probably the lowest I ever felt about the whole situation, because the thing is, and this is a phrase I used a lot in this stretch, I'm willing to help, but I'm not willing to carry. Right. You need to be willing to show that you're willing to work for yourself, to look out for yourself, in order to deserve, to get help. You have to be looking out for yourself to some extent. And this visit, Scotty was clearly not looking out for himself. He looked bad. He looked, the money was gone at this point. they were scraping, they'd been by our house a couple of times. They'd stored some stuff there, basically looking for stuff to take and sell. Every time we saw them, they were looking for stuff to sell off. And there wasn't much left at this point. And we walked in, and the house, the one door was like jammed because I don't know if there was a problem with the heat in the house, and it wasn't their fault, but the heat was basically either off or it was on full blast, and they turned it down or off, and I don't know if a pipe burst or something, but there'd been a water leak underneath in the basement that warped the floor by the one door. And we walked in, and the house is more of a mess than normal. I mean, there were bottles and random things everywhere. It was just it was a disaster. It was heartbreaking to see. And Kristen got Scotty to come downstairs, and Scotty just wanted us gone at that point. Yeah. He didn't want to talk to us. He didn't want, there were probably other people upstairs. I don't know, but it was whatever came into his head to try to get us out the door. Yeah. And he wasn't even remotely trying. And it was, Kristen basically ran that conversation, and I kept my mouth shut because I was furious. And the dismissal, the lack of caring, and I didn't trust myself to say anything. I did not trust myself at that moment. When we left, about the only thing of my anger that came out was when we left. I slammed the door hard enough that I thought the frame was going to come out out of the wall. And we're walking back to the car, and he's putting the blanket back up over because the house, the door actually had a visible gap at the bottom where daylight would come through, and it was the middle of winter, so they pushed the blanket back in front of it. Scotty, despite not wanting to, not really taking us that seriously, did have the nerve to ask Kristen to give the key back. No.
Well, sure.
Yeah. That was probably, for my money, the lowest point.
Yeah.
Seeing that he basically had gone through everything he had and didn't have anything left, and still wasn't looking to do better. That's addiction, you don't think about anything else. And he admitted that he had done a lot of different things at that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's sort of, I get the impression, having not gone through this myself, at least not to the extent that you have, that you sort of reach a point where everybody feels like the thing that they're doing is the only thing that they can do, where the addict feels like they're locked in. They don't feel like they can do anything differently. They feel like, well, this is just the way it is, and they don't really have a realistic option to do something else. And the family, the friends, the people who are on the outside wanting to help are stuck because, like you said, if you step in and try to help too much, then you're doing things for them that eventually they're going to have to do themselves. And that's not really helping, if you can't force someone to care about something that they don't care about, like you hope that they'll come to care about it eventually. But if they're in a point in their life where something that seems like to you the thing that they should be worried about more than anything else, and it just doesn't seem important to them, you can't force them to care about that if they don't. And you're locked in where either they're going to get better or they're not,
Yeah, a phrase that came up a lot during this that I used a lot was, some lessons can't be taught, they can only be learned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until he reaches the point where he wants to do better for himself, he's not going to do any better no matter how much effort we pour into it. And somewhere in here, he'd gone back to Jody. He got permission from Jody to go back and get the last couple of things because, she did a quick job and didn't get everything. He still had stuff in the house. And at some point in here, he had gone back. I believe Kristen was there too and got the last things. And as they were walking out, Scotty had turned back and says, "Oh, I guess there never really was a warrant out for my arrest, was there?" And Jody said, "I never said that. I never said there was a warrant." Like, really? So Kristen and Scotty came back and pulled up Kristen's Facebook Messenger, which is where they had this discussion, and checked what was said, because Facebook Messenger keeps these records.
Yeah.
You know, you can see what you said to people in the past, and it was there plain as day. There is a warrant out for Scotty's arrest. There never was, but she said there was, and she told us there was, and then she insisted there wasn't. Instead of doing the responsible adult thing and even so much as informing us there was an issue, or trying to work things out, or let us know that, you know, there were problems that need to be dealt with, she basically ignored the situation as long as possible until she thought it reached a point she couldn't handle it anymore, and then she made up a lie and threw him out the door.
Yeah.
What kind of pathetic, piss poor excuse for a human being would do something like that?
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, she didn't even try.
Yeah.
And, you know, we tried, we did what we could. There's an extent that it wouldn't have really helped, but, you know, you got to at least inform us if there's something wrong, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah, so Scotty at this point was really heading toward a low ebb here, and I think all of us were really worried that there was no chance he was coming out of this. You know, you head toward rock bottom, and sometimes you have to hit that before you can start working your way back up.
Yeah.
So the eviction came along, and he had to be out of the place because they couldn't pay rent. And I think that this could have been a lot worse, because the lease, we ran it by a lawyer, because Kristen wanted to see about getting her name off of it if possible, and that wasn't happening. It was the lawyer said it was the most incredible lease they'd ever seen, the most ironclad lease. It was like 25 pages long.
Jesus.
Yeah. And the lawyers were shaking his head, looking over, like, wow, never seen a lease like this before.
Wow.
But I think the fact that Kristen had clearly worked so hard, at times had convinced Scotty to pay ahead, which the person said they'd never seen that before, people paying ahead on the monthly rent, you know?
Yeah, no.
I think that the efforts that Kristen primarily gone through on this, the landlord was willing to work a little bit more, because understood, you know, it was trying and wasn't getting help from the actual tenants.
Yeah.
But we helped them move out. They got a box truck, like a U-Haul, I think it was, and went up, and it had snowed heavily like a day or two before, and they didn't have a snow shovel. They didn't really have anything. But they needed to clear the snow to try to get stuff out. So the only shovel they had, we have it in our garage now, I think, was like it was like a gardening spade type thing. It's a metal shovel that came down to a point and has the ridged edge down.
Yeah, yeah.
He shoveled snow with that to clear the sidewalk to try to get stuff out. And that was just a fiasco, because, again, without a deadline, he didn't even really start packing until, you know, dawn the day we were moving out. And Michelle was no help at all, claimed a bad back.
Well, I've done that before.
But we managed to get stuff. Well, there was the stuff that they were keeping with themselves, and then the stuff that we were basically packing the leftover stuff in his old room downstairs, just trying to put stuff in and have somewhere for it so they could get things together. And we got to it took hours. It was a mess, but we got it. We got stuff loaded into the truck, and we came here and unloaded the stuff that needed to be unloaded here. And at one point, Michelle was on the phone with somebody. I'm like, don't help her anything, as we're carrying stuff in and out. And she got really upset about that.
Yeah.
And then later, once we sort of had everything sorted out, and Cat came in the room, and Michelle couldn't carry anything because she had a bad back, reached down and picked up the cat. No problem.
Well, it's a cat. It's a lightweight cat.
Yeah, so as she was leaving, because they were sort of filtering out, it was Scotty and Michelle and some mutual associate of theirs. As Michelle was walking out, I said, bye. I said, I hope your fictitious injury gets better soon. She's like, what? And I just like, have a safe trip, whatever. So she went down to the street and then to the car, and then Scotty and Kristen went down, and then they went down, and all of a sudden I hear her crying, because what Michelle did was waited till Scotty was down there and then turned on the waterworks to complain about what I had said to her. And the state he was in, he threatened to come back up and hit me because I was saying such mean things to her. afterward, yeah, they left, and then after Kristen confronted me about that, and she was not happy that I did that. She's like, that doesn't help.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, she's right. It doesn't help. But I still don't regret saying it, which maybe I should, but I don't.
Yeah. I could see both sides of that. If I were in your space, your place there, I might have felt similar to how you felt.
I mean, it didn't help. It helped me. It didn't help them at all.
Right.
It didn't improve the situation at all.
Right.
But I felt the need to say something to call her out on her endless bullshit,
Yeah.
And then we went through another stage where we didn't even know where they were for the longest time. But eventually, wherever they were wasn't going to work out anymore. And she went out to Staten Island again with some friends out there. And Scotty was going to go up to a rehab in Utah because the option was that he was going to end up being homeless. So at this point, they've got pretty much nothing left. I mean, the cars are gone, the money's gone. They're approaching homeless. She had a friend I guess she could stay with, but he couldn't. So he decided he was going to take another shot at the rehab and went out to a place in Utah. And literally a half hour before his flight left for Utah, Michelle called him and broke up with him.
Mm.
She tried to come up with the worst possible time to do that, where it would be the most hurtful. Is there a worse time to do it than that?
Probably not. Probably not.
But, in a sick sort of way, that turned out to be sort of a blessing in disguise, because he went out there untethered.
Right.
He had like a clean break at that point.
Yeah, like you can sort of start over.
Right. Yeah. Which is what he was trying to do. And he went out there and he went at it, and they sort of, he left early because they basically said I guess the insurance company decided he didn't need it anymore, because, insurance companies make the decisions on these things.
Absolutely.
In America.
Absolutely. You're done.
But
you're better now.
Yeah, but he found a place. He met some people who were good. He made good friends. He got a job out there. He's working with like scrap metal.
Mm.
And he knew which things were good and which weren't, and why. And he was trying to put his life back together. And we started to see improvement at that point. He was, how he said, I'm willing to help but not carry. He said some lessons have to be learned. I think he learned at that point, and he was out there and he was really trying to do better. And we were getting a lot of positive signs, and we were still worried at times because he would still look like he wasn't eating real well, or he still have a gaunt look. We weren't sure he was ever 100% clean, but it wasn't like driving his life at that point, Yeah. And we were really glad to see it, because we were worried that the direction things were going in.
Mm-hmm.
And he came out for a couple of times. He flew out for Thanksgiving and for Mother's Day. Thanksgiving was it's the last time that the five siblings were together. That was one of the photos that we were posting around, when he passed away. Some of the photos were, one of them was the five on Thanksgiving, because Kristen's mother lives up there, and then Kristen's brother and husband live a couple of houses down. Like, they're on the same street.
Yeah.
And when we go up there, typically the kids will stay with them, with their mother.
Mm-hmm. And
then Kristen and I would stay with her brother because of the, space and so on, how things worked out, And so Thanksgiving dinner, things are going on. Kristen and I are tired. We go back, we go to sleep. The kids, I say kids, I mean, the oldest is over 30, but kids.
Yeah, they're kids.
They decided they were up, and they decided they were hungry. They decided to have Thanksgiving dinner 2.0, and they went and they raided the fridge and they were heating stuff up. And there's a picture of the five of them standing in the kitchen, like all smiling into the camera. It's taken somewhere around midnight, 1 a.m., somewhere in there.
Wow.
And they've got their plates of food, and they all look so happy. That's the photo I kept looking at afterwards,
Yeah.
But had a good time. Things went well, and then he came back. We went back up there for Mother's Day, and he flew in for that, and so did Kristen's other brother Matt, who lives out in Colorado. But he was in. We went to an escape room. Are you familiar with escape rooms at all?
Yeah,
The
I've never done one, but sounds like fun. I've
Yeah,
never done one.
it was me and Scotty and Matt, my Kristen's brother,
Yeah.
and we ended up in a group with they give groups of about 10, so we had 7 other people, and I think some of them were like MIT students.
Oh wow.
So some of them were like the math issue, and like they were like you had to get the time, like one clock at one point to say a certain thing, and I forget like one button would move the minutes up by like 7, the other would move the hours back by something.
Oh yeah,
something.
And you had to work it out so it got to
like,
just the right.
Yeah. Well, you hit this one 11 times, this one 4 times, and you got it. And but we all helped out on certain things. There were 1 or 2 things that I found that I got the next thing open, so we had a really good time. And then so we had that, and then there was a at the end, the last day we were up there, we were playing different board games. They play a lot of games, and we're all together up there. And you're familiar with taboo? Like you have to come up with a certain word without saying the 5 most common things.
Yeah, I've played it before.
We had the one round where it was I don't know, Kristen and was it Sam and Sarah? Was it Sarah and I forget exactly. And then on the other team, there's me and Scotty and Cameron, the youngest sibling. And the one, the normal score for a round, the way we play is like 3 or 4 points or whatever, because you have the timer and you screw up and it goes. We got like 9 the one round. I was saying things and Scotty was just bam, bam, bam. I mean, Cameron was our team and Cameron was just watching like, what are you 2 doing? But we
were in the zone.
Yeah, we had we had a good time, and we were getting all sorts of positive signs from Scotty. He still didn't look great, and when we left, Kristen was crying a little bit, and Scotty was tearing up, when we left. But we had good signs, and then he made an effort to keep in touch. He gave Kristen a card where he said that he knew he's been very, very tough to live with, to deal with the last year or 3, but he really, really thanked her for not giving up and for working with him. And he was making plans for the future. Because he was trying to get into a better job. I didn't know at the time he was planning on coming in, surprising Sarah for her 18th birthday and having some things planned and do some stuff for that. He's planning for the future. He was keeping in touch. He was calling people, like everyone called. He was calling at least once a week, calling to some people nearly daily. He was keeping in touch. I mean, it was all very positive signs, and we were looking. I was thinking, this is great. He's over the hump. And I think everything's going to be good. Then the phone rang.
Yeah.
It's you dare to hope, and it's in a sick sort of way. It would have been easier if we gotten the call a year earlier, because at that point we kind of saw it coming. But it's when somebody's back on the upswing and you start to believe, and then one mistake.
Yeah.
You never quite outrun addiction.
Yeah, I think the common experience that I've seen from people is that until I guess I assume if you're on the inside of it as well, but also if you're on the outside of it and you're looking in at someone that you care about who is struggling with it, is that I don't think it ever really occurs to you in a way that feels real that the worst could happen until it actually does. Like you always feel like, well, but they're still alive. They can still turn it around. They're doing better. They're going to this place for help, or they've just moved in with this person, or and for some reason it never feels real or urgent unless I suppose if you've gone through it already.
Hmm.
I mean, if you've experienced it yourself already and you know, oh no, 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 don't ever think that they're out of the woods. But if you haven't, then I think there's a cruelty to it where you don't, you never, you always assume that it's not going to turn out this way. Or if you obviously you have the thought, but it doesn't really feel real. It doesn't feel like, oh, but that's probably not, it's gonna work out,
Yeah.
and when it
These are
doesn't.
these are things that happen to other people on TV and
Oh
on
yeah.
the news. It never hits home. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And until it happens to you, I mean, I feel that way about death in general. I think a lot of us think of it that way, where, and maybe that's just a natural defense mechanism. Maybe that's just something that we have in our brains to keep us from just, wallowing in despair like all day, is that we don't think of it as real until there's no choice but to confront the reality of it. Um, yeah, but and in cases like Scotty, it's even worse because it's like you have two cruelties stacked on top of each other. You have someone who died so young, and it doesn't matter what the cause is. It's just someone who was at the beginning of their life, and it just doesn't seem natural. And then on top of that is, like you were just saying, it seemed like he was starting to work his way back up.
Yeah. We haven't gotten the official word back because like they do tox screening and so on. So I mean, it's not official. We suspect it was. It most likely was. We don't know officially.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, so it's after all the lows, it was really good to see him moving in the right direction. I actually said to him at Mother's Day, it's good to have you back.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was engaged and participating and happy in a way that he hadn't been in a very long time.
Yeah.
The very last time, I think it was the last time that Scotty had called Kristen and talked to her. Scotty explicitly thanked her for raising him to not be racist.
Wow.
Because one of the new coworkers where he worked, had only been there a week or two, was like a 19-year-old kid, and really thought that the racism jokes were funny.
Oh yeah.
Was really into that, and Scotty said he'd pull him aside at times and say, "Look, that's not," and try to work with him and try to help him see, that
Yeah.
that is so not funny.
Yeah.
And thanks for that because when the kids go out to their fathers, let's just say that there tends to be a lot of racism and intolerance on that side of the family.
Yeah.
And Scotty realized that if he'd been there, he might not have realized the problem that presents.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how they had being explicitly thanked for raising him to not be racist.
Yeah. God.
But then so I got that phone call and didn't sink in right away.
No.
I don't think things like that can. I'd only been at work like 10 minutes. I just started, so I was wrapping it up, and I'm like, okay, let me just finish this.
Well, yeah, I know I react to things like that too. Like I go into, okay, well, what do I have to do? Like instead of dwelling on it, instead of focusing on my feelings, which always come out eventually. Like I'm very much like, okay, well, what does this mean? What do I have to do? What's the first thing I have to do? Okay, what's the next thing I have to do? And I become very task oriented.
Right. It's the tasks need to be done, but it's also a way of distracting yourself. So I finished what I was doing and I shut down my computer, or I was being shut down. I went into my supervisor and said, I got the call. I'm told that, my son said, I got to go. It was kind of a lurching explanation. I don't know that I was even speaking in complete sentences at that point.
Yeah.
But he was like, do whatever you need to do and, go fine. And so I left. So I had probably the shortest work day ever. I was at work for maybe 10 minutes and was out the door. And I'm heading home. I'm on the interstate when Kristen calls again, asks me to pick up Sarah from school because Sarah it was her last day of school. There were still 2 days left, but if exams were over and she was going to be going with her boyfriend and his family down to Washington, D.C. for a week. And so I picked her up from school, got her summer vacation off to an early start. And she had to text, a couple people, leaving school and things were going to happen. And then I broke the news to her, told her everything I knew, just about the phone call. And she started crying. I pulled over right on the side of the road, and we cried together on the side of the road for a little bit. Front seat of the car. Wow. Got her summer vacation off to absolutely the worst start ever.
Yeah.
And she actually offered to drive the rest of the way home in case I wasn't up to handling it, because she doesn't have a license, she has a permit.
Yeah.
And I was like, thank you, but no.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell a 17-year-old that news and then ask her to drive the rest of the way.
Hand her the keys. Here you go, kid.
But I really appreciated that, looking out, and
yeah.
So, and there was the thing in my head about how the roommate gave the news. We didn't have anything official. The denial springs eternal. You're like, maybe there's a misunderstanding. Maybe that's not what happened. Even people don't make calls like that on accident or on a hunch.
Yeah.
But that thought was still there. But I didn't speak it out loud, because how cruel would that be?
Yeah, you don't want to put that thought out there so
yeah.
people can latch onto it and then
take it away again.
Yeah, when you know how it's going to turn out. Yeah.
But we got home, and Kristen was there with Cameron, with the youngest, and so then we have to do the letting everyone know. And how you go about that. And contacted Jen's husband first, so that in case she's at work or whatever, have somebody there, because we didn't want to let anyone know when they were alone.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So we had Evan speak, told him first so that he could get to Jen and talk to her, and then we were going to break the news, but Evan did instead. So, okay.
Yeah.
And called Sam. She was at college, got out of class, and Kristen had to call and tell her. Thought that she was a bit closer to the dorm than she was. She was like literally right out of class and in the stairwell. But family is up there, because again, it's in Boston, and that's where Dan lives. That's where his mother lives. So able to get the support network there, get people out to help right away. And so not alone. And told some family friends. Anne is a family friend who used to live out in Lewisburg with them when they were in the other school district, and has known them has known the family forever. And she was like a godsend, she because she came over to our house and she has some stuff that she can work from home, so she was working from our house, and we have a better internet connection at our home than she does at hers. So it's like, hey, come over, work from our home. You actually get stuff done. But she put together the list of things that you need to do about, informing people about then deciding what you're going to do as far as burial, cremation, for informing people, the obituary, the service. She sort of put together a list for us that we kind of lived off of for a couple of days. And while she was taking it pretty hard too, because she's known family longer than I have, she helped. She helped Kristen move out when she left her ex. So been there forever. They used to work together. Actually, I don't know if they work together with Anne, but anyway, I don't want to get into too far off the tracks here. And she was there, and she was like, because she was a step back from it, she was able to keep focus in a way that we weren't.
Right.
She came up, family friend Steph came up the next day, and Anne came back over for a second day. My mother came over and saw me on the porch, trying to hold it together, and cried together a bit for that. It's kind of surreal, in a way, because you did, when you have all these tasks you have to do, you intermittently detach yourself emotionally so you can do them. So you have the moments where you fall to pieces, and then you pull together and you focus on this, and you're doing what, stuff that needs to be done, and then you fall apart again. And Anne was really able to help with that as well, keeping us together on that. So, and you're trying, hugging is up like 87,000% in our house for a week,
Sure.
And crying as well, and tissues and so on. And then, so basically, Kristen let everyone who needed to know on her side of the family know, and got it to the right people, so it gets into the family network. Because we about an hour later, we got a condolence text, or she got a condolence text from a member of the family she hadn't told. So we know the word's getting out where it needs to go.
Right.
The afternoon was my turn because I had to tell my side of the family, and I was doing that later because I went over. The way my parents' work schedule works now, they aren't really home at the same time, home and awake at the same time.
Right.
So I went over in the evening when Dad was home, because I think Dad would handle it better, and because I couldn't. Mom works second shift, so I couldn't go over and give her this news and then take off and leave her by herself and then have her go to work.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so I told Dad, and then my grandmother, Aunt Jenny, together, Mom's sister, I called them. I got Aunt Jenny, which is good because my grandmother's like 91 years old, and I didn't want 92. I didn't want to give her the news.
Yeah.
Give it to Aunt Jenny, and then she would be able to break it properly because she knows how to handle it. And I called, had to get Aunt's number from Aunt Jenny. She didn't have the right number because they'd moved recently. So, and I told them, we get the information out. And then we're trying to figure out the service, which we didn't want to do. We didn't want to do like a necessarily traditional one. Scotty wasn't religious and wouldn't have wanted, a lot of talk about God.
Right.
And we bounced around some ideas. We wanted. I talked about like getting together somewhere, having like a pavilion or something, and talking and discussing, and just trying to do something that was non-traditional and celebrate his life rather than mourn his death. Because a lot of these services are more about mourning than about celebrating. Yeah. And when Pavilion came up, the thought of Canoas, which is an amusement park, came up. We thought about it's like that's too far the other way, and we struck about the idea of having a service on the beach and having some discussion, talking and maybe spreading some ashes, because we basically decided on cremation.
Yeah.
And basically, we got outside of the immediate family, we got blowback from pretty much everyone on that. I think some misinterpreted. I mean, we got back where the people thought it was going to be like an all-day party at the beach. It's like, no, that's not at all what we're talking about. But you have to pick your battles to some extent. There's only so much emotional capital you have to spend, and after having to explain that Scotty had passed away and having to do it again and again and again, and trying to figure out what to do, there just wasn't the emotional capital to fight that battle. So we ended up doing a traditional service at a funeral home, a couple miles away from the house here. Yeah. And had a very, not religious, but still, it was, you have the viewing, you have the urn, you have the pictures. And doing something that's basically traditional so that nobody's sense of propriety was, offended, which is, the most important thing in a time like this. Yeah. Yeah. But we, it wasn't worth having opening up a front on that. And then if we had done that, then everyone who'd been there would have been passive aggressive about how wrong it was. And it just,
I don't have like to me, whenever someone close to me has died, the funeral is never what I remember. Like the funeral is just something that, like, if it were within the bounds of decorum for me to skip it altogether, I would have. Like what helps is talking to people who also cared about the person, and commiserating and being together and telling stories. Like I remember when my grandfather died, I remember that his funeral took place. I was there. And it wasn't, I don't have negative memories of it, but it's just sort of a neutral thing. Like, oh, and then that happened. The memory that I hold closest from that time is just being at the house and talking with my dad, you know,
Mm.
and just telling stories about him, and just, you know, like you were saying, you know, how you wanted to celebrate his life, you know, talk about what a great guy he was, talk about the good times you had. That really helps. The funeral stuff, to me anyway, is just, you know, something that you have to do. And that's I think, and for people who haven't gone through it, whether it's you know, an unexpected thing, or whether it's something that has been a long time coming, like when someone dies, there are so many things that you have to do.
Yeah, and that was something
Yeah,
we found out with the list that that Anne had put together, and it doesn't stop. And you
no,
have to put the emotions aside and deal with them. You know,
yeah,
you have to, because these are things that need to be done.
yeah, exactly. You don't have you have to do them, and there's so many things, and some of them are like, oh, we have to decide what we're going to do for a memorial service. We have to pick a funeral home. And then some of it is just little stuff like calling people and making sure people know, and, you know,
And making sure people find out right, so that they're not hearing about it. You know, you don't want them to hear about it on Facebook because the family hasn't been informed yet. You know,
yeah, yeah. So there, and yeah, to me, I mean, I think you're right that you have to pick your battles. And if, you know, the rest of the family says we'd be more comfortable with a traditional service, then you just kind of have to bite your tongue and go, well, okay. But it is a shame to me, because, like, to me, the only thing that ever helps is, you know, kind of what you were describing, like you had hoped you'd be able to do, just get everybody together and, you know, let's just be
well,
together, and, you
we
know,
may still do that.
yeah,
We had actually floated the idea originally of possibly doing it this weekend, but because Scotty's 22nd birthday would have been Tuesday, July 10th.
yeah,
And we floated, you know, possibly this weekend or next weekend doing it. It hasn't really worked out because there's too much other stuff going on with
yeah.
and financial problem, because, you know, yeah, have to replace the roof, and the one car's engine went this past week, so yeah,
Oh,
all sorts of,
Jesus Christ.
yeah, you know, it's when it rains it pours.
Ah,
But we, you know, we may, but we may not. You know, it
yeah,
depends if we can swing it, and, you know, the money side of things, because goddamn, death is expensive. It's
yeah.
you don't realize, but, you know,
Well, and and an added expense for you guys, because you had to fly to Utah.
yeah, yeah, we managed to sort some things out, and we got the guinea pigs sorted out, because we have guinea pigs and we can't leave them alone. You know, they went with Steph for a couple of weeks while things were going on,
Yeah.
and we had my parents take care of the cats here, because cats are a little bit easier to take care of. You food and water and litter box, and you take off. You know,
Yeah, they're pretty good. Yeah.
they're fairly self-sustaining. No, but we I had to get things together. I actually attended work Wednesday and Thursday because I knew I was taking a ton of time off. So I ended up attending, you know, going to work, and, you know, word got out there. You know, I wasn't necessarily going out of my way to make a show for everyone about it, but I wanted, you know, I wasn't keeping it a secret, and people asked and I told them. And so, yeah. And then
Yeah.
we flew out of Boston, not only because we have family up there, but because we had a choice. We could have driven up to Boston and spent time with the family there, and then flown out to Utah, come back and come home. Or we could have gone to Philly, and we've had to park the car there and pay for the parking for the entire time we were gone. And then Philly flew to Salt Lake City with a connection through Boston.
Yeah.
Well, might as well go to Boston, right?
Right.
So we did that, and Anne, I remember I've said how much Anne has helped out with all of this.
Yeah.
She got a good deal. She flew out the day before us. Got a good deal on a hotel and a rental car, and she went out a day earlier and basically went to the places before we did, and sort of, you know, laid some groundwork, you know, checked out the scenery, you know, what needs to be done, what chores have to be done, who do we have to meet, and meeting with people, and so that when we came in, we weren't flying blind. That was a big thing for her to do that for us, and she didn't have to, and she ended up she flew out Friday. We flew out Saturday, and then she came back on Sunday night. She took the red eye because she had to be at work on Monday, but she still did all of this.
Wow.
She when we flew in, you know, we got in at, like, I don't know, 10, 11, and that was Utah time. So it's after midnight for our body clocks, and she actually I'd ordered food for us, so we had pizza. It really, really helped out. And then, so we got an Airbnb. We were looking for a hotel room, but there's a conference that was starting the last day we were going to be there. We couldn't get any hotel rooms for the last day we had to be there that weren't like an hour away. Mm-hmm. So we ended up getting an Airbnb. It turned out to be a pretty good place. We liked it. They worked with us a bit, and and that is expensive, but it worked out well. And it's good to have our own place, our own refrigerator. We could cook. We had a bit more privacy than a hotel room, which, like I said, it was expensive, but I think it worked out better. And then, you have the tough part where you start of being out there. We actually have to deal with the things. We went out and first day we cleaned his room out because he was basically renting a room with someone. And it was his roommate's girlfriend who found Scotty. So she'd been there Anne had been there the day before, so she knew who we were going to see. And we went out there to the place, and I knew going in that was going to be like one of the two really tough points of the trip. And that was going to be the tough one because it was going to be something that was going to last. The other one was getting the ashes. Right. But you do that, it's an event, you get them, and it happens. Cleaning out the room is an extended period of time, and that's the room that he died in. Yeah. So we get in there, and it's a mess as anyone's room would be, And it was kind of overwhelming. But again, Anne was there, and she said, we started looking at it, and where do we go? And Anne's like, clothes first. Focus on clothing first. And she broke the task down so that it was, a little bit at a time. Yeah. And did that, finding things. We bought some clothes with him on Mother's Day when he was in. We bought some clothes. I got a new pair of sneakers. He got some jeans. We actually found the pair of jeans with the tags still on them. He never even wore them. Wow. And then sorting stuff out, stuff that we want, stuff that was garbage, stuff that we were going to leave for his roommate to decide what to do with because his roommate was about the same size. And then you start going through other stuff. We took the mattress out. He'd gotten a mattress just in January, a mattress in box spring that he had paid and was taking out, I guess, a loan for. He was paying it in installments and had to take the mattress out because, how do you put it tactfully, the post-death mess. You had to take the mattress out. Yeah. Box spring was still good. Prop the box spring up against the wall. Once the clothing was done, we're going through a box of random papers that has bills and stuff. And, if you're saying you divorce yourself from what's going on, from the emotional part. Yeah. It didn't occur to me until later that to create space, we took the mattress out, we propped the box spring up. I'm sitting, in the corner, near where the box was, and it didn't occur to me later. We're going through the piece of life, and I'm literally sitting right where he died. Yeah, yeah. It didn't occur to me until later, but going through those papers, there's something else that struck me a little bit later about it. It's just paperwork of a life, but it's very depressing too, because there was a credit card, and there's some bills for that. But just a moment, the cat's getting into something.
Doesn't the cat realize that we're doing a show?
There we go. We let him out of the room and we're all good. Sorry about that.
Doesn't that cat know that we're doing a show?
Obviously not. It was up in my lap for a little bit, but basically wanted out of the room. Yeah. So I had to unplug. You still there? Can I still hear you?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. There we go. Just trying to make certain it's still the sound. All right. But going through that box of stuff, and it's something that kind of struck me later because there were some things that paint a depressing picture because he, in that box, he found that he applied for a car loan and he was rejected. He didn't have a car out there. He was trying to get one, but it was, it's a tough thing, with the mess that his life had been in the credit history. And he's trying to put it back together, but that was a problem. He was rejected for a car loan. He applied for a credit card. He was rejected for that. We found out that he applied for some mental health services, and that was rejected too. Whether it's by necessity or wasn't done the right way, I don't know. But if you need mental health services, you're probably not necessarily in the right state of mind to dot all the I's and cross all the T's in the paperwork.
Yeah.
So that thing. And when he was out visiting for Mother's Day, his back was really hurting him because he's working with scrap metal, and so it can be physically demanding. He's having a lot of trouble with his back. He's having trouble sleeping. He was looking into getting another job, and he'd actually had one picked out. The Thursday before he died was going to be his last day at the old job, and he actually got rejected for the job because they found the criminal record that he had, and it was a driving job, and theoretically they could impound the truck if they wanted to extradite him. Pike County's not going to extradite him from Utah for a drug charge, but
there was the possibility, yeah.
And so I mean, he was in a job that was causing physical pain. He liked the job, he liked the people, but he was looking for something that was a bit less demanding. So he had a constant physical pain with the back for the work he was doing. And he's getting blocked at every turn where he's trying to improve his life. He's trying to get out of the hole he's in. And it's a very depressing picture that the paperwork in there painted. It's like if you're in constant pain and or regular pain, you're having trouble sleeping because of the back problems, and you can't get any break anywhere as far as trying to get something to rebuild your life, and you're fighting this addiction where you know that there are drugs that at least temporarily will make you feel better.
Yeah.
The relapse makes a terrible sort of sense,
Yeah, it's back to feeling like it's the only thing you can do. I mean, if you try to do, especially if you've tried to do something else and you're not getting anywhere. Yeah, you're right. From the perspective of an addict, that it does probably make sense. Even if you know intellectually that you're making a mistake.
Yeah, and having the door closed on the better job, it's just But that was tough. And then we have putting a bunch of stuff in the rental car and bringing it back and doing some more sorting out once we got to the place we were staying, because Jen was only able to come in for one day, and it was at the last day they were out there. So we did some sorting the last day, trying to people wanting different stuff. Because he was in the scrap and the metal recycling, he actually had a drawer completely full of wires. He was talking about stripping stuff down because apparently some stuff is actually worth more in the parts in it. You'll get more for just the part than for giving the entire component, because they don't have to take the component apart and get it out. He was talking about doing that too. Some of the stuff we had here at the house in Pennsylvania, he was like, "Hold on to it. When next time I'm out there, I'll go through it. We can sort it out, get the good parts out of it. Get more for it."
Yeah.
And he that was something that he was planning. He wanted to come out and go through the room with his stuff and Michelle's stuff and sort out mine, hers, and garbage, and he was going to go through the others, help us out with some other things at the same time. But yeah, drawer full of wires. So some of them are like whatever. Some of them we kept, we'll donate or whatever. But so did that, and then we had the next day was Tuesday, and that was the day where we actually went to the funeral home and got the ashes and the urn and so on. It was, well, I guess we got the urn locally, from the funeral home here, so it didn't have to be sent the same, but it's just, and then the paperwork and the copies of the death certificate, and doing that job would have to be difficult because they have the soft tones and so on, but it's got to be very hard to be dealing with that and dealing with people who are grieving like 100% of the time.
Yeah, I don't think I could do that. There are many jobs, mostly in like the medical and sort of medical adjacent field, where you're just going to have to deal with tragedy and sadness all day long. I don't know how people can stand to do it. Well, however much money they make, they must be underpaid. you know.
But it does make a lot of money. I mean, the cremation was like 2,500, and then the funeral service out here was like 2,500.
Oh well, yeah. I mean,
it's expensive.
There are certain parts of it that feel kind of like it should be illegal to charge people that much money. You know, I mean, when you're at the lowest point in your life, you're at the most vulnerable place you've ever been, and you have these expenses that you have no choice but to take on, and it's thousands and thousands of dollars. I mean, yeah.
So we got that, and then Jen came out. So the family, you know, 4 of us, you know, me and Kristen and the 4 kids, now we're back together, and did some of the sorting out of stuff and some of the doing together. We told some stories, and then, you know, alternating between the laughing and the crying, because that's the way it works.
Yeah.
And then we did the last thing, because we had a small section of the ashes separated out. And I don't know if I've shown you the photos, or if you've seen them, but there's a place up there called Donut Falls, where it's like a waterfall through a rock face down into something else. And he had his picture taken in front of me. He talked very positively, very highly of that experience, and wanting to be, you know, how he enjoyed that. And we talked about spreading some of his ashes out there, a mountain or something, and Cameron struck on the idea of doing it there because of the place that meant something to him. And that was, we thought, a really good idea. We talked with some of his friends out there, you know, having, you know, the closest thing we're going to have to a funeral service in Utah, but we wanted friends, people who cared about him, to have the chance, you know. So we did that, and so we went up, and it's up into the mountains. Like, Salt Lake City's at an elevation like 4,400 feet, but the mountain we went to was like 7,700 once you get to the top. You only drive so far, and then you take a trail up the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And the trails change, because you walk it till it's, you know, dead, but then they change it so it can grow back. So there's all sorts of places where you can see the ghosts of old trails in other directions blocked off.
Wow.
And we were doing fine. I mean, it was tough with the thin air and the up. We were fine until near the very end, when you had to sort of shimmy down a rough rock face, and then it had rained. So to get up there, you basically had to walk through the stream and then rock climb like a 45-degree angle up to the last thing.
Wow.
And we're like, no, we can't, because we have a plane to catch tonight, and we aren't going to miss that because we're in the ER with, you know, broken bones because we tumbled down a rock face.
Yeah.
Even if we didn't, we'd walk through the stream, we'd be soaking wet feet for the entire airplane flight back, you know. So we did we met up with some of his friends. There's a guitar that's passed hands as people have died that went to the one person there. I think he appreciated that. Had some, Ryan and Connor were they seemed together with them, really good guys from, you know, from the little bit we saw of them. Yeah. And then a couple other people showed up, and we went up and had the sort of said a couple of things, and somebody who wanted to be there but couldn't had sent a long email and read that out loud and burned it. And then each of us spread a little bit of the ashes that were separated out right into the stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, but I'm glad we did it. And they spoke positively. The friends out there spoke positively of having the opportunity and being included. You know, because we certainly could have come in and grabbed stuff and left and never said hi to anyone, but we tried to be involved and involve as friends. And, you know, most of them are recovering, so there were issues. I mean, the roommate Chris, I think he's a better person than we saw, because we were seeing him when he was really hurting. He called Scotty his best friend. Yeah. We saw him twice, and I don't think he wasn't sober either time, because his drug of choice is alcohol. So I think that he was better than what we saw, you know?
Yeah.
And one of the people who's up there had tumbled into the stream like 4 or 5 times when we were there, because I think he was high as well. So, and it's sort of a vicious cycle, because you're hurting, and so you turn back to the thing that makes you feel better, even though it hurts you as well.
Yeah.
So, but overall, except because Chris didn't get there until we were 3/4 of the way back down the mountain. He was a bit frustrated that we wouldn't go back up, but we had the plane to catch. The sun was setting. It was he tried. We tried. It didn't happen, but you can only do so much. Because we went from the mountain directly to the airport. We filled up with the gas, put it in the airport, and then we got there, grabbed food, and were boarded onto the plane in 20 minutes.
Wow.
We did not.
We're cutting it close.
Yeah, we did not have spare time.
Yeah.
And we took the red eye back. The only flight back was the red eye. It takes off after dark and lands, once the sun is up.
Right.
So that was interesting. Flight back, we were kind of separated for the flight back, but the red eye. We got in, we got like a Lyft or an Uber or something, and we had too many people in the car, but like literally too many people in the car. But we managed to make it back and gave the guy a good tip. And then we slept for we got back in. We sort of decompressed, spoke to family there. We slept at Kristen's mother's house for several hours. Tried to sort out the arrangements for the service here in Pennsylvania, and then drove back. So after taking the red eye, after all this emotional stuff, we drove home on Friday, or I guess we drove home on, I don't remember the days of the week now.
Yeah.
Drove home on Thursday so we could prepare Friday for the funeral service Saturday.
Jeez.
And we got that sorted out, and arranging food and having stuff from having the food trays so that we had something afterwards. And it's an extremely draining 2 weeks. I'm glad I'm in the new job, because if I was in the old job and I took that much time off for my son's death, they probably would have fired me.
Oh yeah, that old job. From everything you always told me about it, it seemed like just a complete
the attendance
hellhole. Like
yeah. They actually had a bereavement policy that depending on the relative, you're allotted a certain number of days off for certain degrees of relationship. and while there's something for child, I'm not certain that there was anything for stepchild, because legally there's a lot of difference considered in there.
Right, there's a distinction. And
I took off 8 days in 2 weeks. I took off early Monday. I wasn't there Tuesday. I worked Wednesday, Thursday. I took off Friday and the entire next week. So I missed 8 days in 2 weeks. I would have been fired.
Yeah.
They say, well, we have business needs. Yeah, well, screw your business needs.
I'm not the only one who works here.
That was a phrase I used a lot. We have business needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Jesus.
And getting that sorted out. And then it's not really funny, I guess, but in the whole thing where I said about how I couldn't say, well, maybe it's not true. Maybe there's, maybe it's not. Maybe they're mistaken.
Yeah.
They don't want to give the false hope. Something similar. A phrase that came out at one point. God had a plan for Scotty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't get that one. My wife did. It was over the phone. I was telling one of our mutual friends had sent me. Was talking on Messenger, and we were talking about a little bit. And I mentioned that phrase, and he's like, "Somebody actually said that." It's like, I would have slapped the shit out of someone if they said that to me. Then he said, if I'd been there when it was said to her, I probably would have slapped the shit out of them. And I said, well, it was over the phone, so limited shit slapping opportunities. Like, that's probably not what I meant to say. It's like, I knew where you're going with it. But we the service that we had was not religious at all.
Yeah.
And at the end we did, the thing about you find it online about why you should have a physicist speak at your funeral, going into some of the science of it. And Jen read that aloud. We did we were there for a couple hours, the 2 hours, and then people come up, they say give their respects. Some who were closer stayed, some who are not as close, family, friends, or coworkers or stuff left, and that's fine. I was really glad to see some people, people who show up I hadn't expected to see there. Yeah. And then we did a little bit of speaking at the end, and people telling different stories, and I told the one about how he always knew when I visited, even before he met me. And we wrapped up. We went up to the hotel where some of the family was staying, and we did a meal. the food for everyone, and basically wrapped things up. We ended up getting again a whole bunch of pizza from a place locally because once we were back in this area, everything closes by 11, so
Yeah.
have to move fast to get the stuff before everything is shut down. And then the next morning we got a meal together, and everybody sort of went their separate ways,
Yeah.
And then get back in, Kristen said, so I was supposed to go into work one day and just pretend everything is normal. And I said, well, not normal, but you go back to your routine. Yeah, you kind of have to eventually. And it's, Kristen was trying to be together for the family, and then she would cry for, and I would, that I'd sort of cry when I'm on my own,
Yeah.
I mean, it still hits you. The first day or two, it's like every hour or two, every time you think about it, you just fall to pieces. And then later, it's every couple times a day, once a day, it settles out eventually. I mean, I said it never becomes okay. It never fixes, but eventually, you get used to it. You meet the new status quo. You don't hurt when you think about it. And that's really the best you can hope for. It's not. Nothing is ever going to make it right again. Nothing fixes it. You don't replace somebody.
Yeah. Well, especially when you lose someone who's so close to you. Yeah. It never. I describe it as it never quite feels like life is the way it's supposed to be.
Right. That's good.
Yeah. You know that it's real. You accept it. And as time goes on, you deal with it, and you're not in a state of grief anymore. You get over it as far as you can get over something like that. But it just, whenever you think about it, the fact that they're not here anymore never seems right. It never seems like this is like things are supposed to be the way they were before. And that's whenever for people that I've been close to that have died, that's how I feel about all of them, is that it just, I've gone through my grieving process. I'm over it. I'm okay with it now, but it doesn't seem like it's the way things are supposed to be, and it'll feel that way. It'll always feel that way.
It'll never be right.
Yeah.
There'll always be something missing.
Yeah.
And it makes, I guess it's a little bit easier in our case just because Scotty hasn't lived under our roof in a number of years, and day-to-day life is not changing exactly. It's not like somebody who still lives in the house and suddenly every day is a constant reminder. It's not quite like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't really make it any easier, but there's that.
Yeah.
And one thing that I did after this, I realized I've never been very good at telling the kids that I love them.
Yeah.
And I've always been a little bit distant, I guess. And that was not an intentional choice. It's something that happened kind of organically for a couple of reasons. Because the family had, before I joined the family, they knew each other, obviously. They had their own status quo. And it didn't seem right for me to come in and start making demands and trying to change things, because they have what works for them. And I can't come in and be the tyrant suddenly saying the things that have always been okay suddenly aren't. Plus, Kristen was living on her own with 4 elementary school age kids at that point. She had to pick and choose her battles, so certain things slid.
Right.
That's fine. That's okay. Right. That when you've got 4 kids that young, you're awake and the last one goes to sleep, and then you're awake when the first one gets up, and you're responsible for everything. And you pick your battles so you can survive. That made sense. So I couldn't come and suddenly say, this is right, this is wrong, you can't do this, things have to be this way.
Yeah.
So there was a period where I'm sort of standing back and trying to learn where the balance is, how that works. But there was also, Chris and I talked a lot to stay on the same page as far as these things went, because we needed to communicate well. And we were actually very good at being on the same page and sending a unified message and so on. But The other part was, at that point, the shift that I was working like 2 to 10:30 p.m.
Yeah.
So on the average week, yes, during the school year, they get up. Kristen gets up with them. They get out. They go off to school. They're gone by like 9 o'clock. I get up, 10:30. Shower, come downstairs. I have my early meal. I go to work for 2 o'clock. They come home from school like 3:30, 4 o'clock. They go to bed 9 or 10. I get home quarter of 11. Everyone's asleep. I have a meal. I watch Daily Show, Colbert Report. That was on at the time.
Yeah.
I'm up to like maybe 1, 2 in the morning. I go to sleep. Lather, rinse, repeat.
Right.
During the school week, I would see them Saturday and Sunday. I would not see them during the week because our schedules are so different. I wasn't home. And then on every other weekend, they were out in Jersey with their father.
Right.
And so on those weeks, I would see them, I'd see them Saturday, I'd see them Sunday, I'd see them Sunday night dinner. Then everything, they'd wind down. I'd go upstairs. I wouldn't see them again until next Sunday night at dinner. I would literally go a week without seeing them.
Yeah.
So there's a certain disconnect there. I'm not close because I'm never there. And I tell a story that it's good for a laugh, but it was frustrating at the same time. One day I came, it was a weekend, and I came downstairs for breakfast, and this Cameron came out, and it's like, "You're here?" And probably a bit more annoyed than I should have. Like, I live here, and I think I was a little bit edgier than I should have been, and like, whoa, backed off. And
right.
Getting a bowl of cereal together, have breakfast, and Sarah comes out and goes, looks at the clock, and goes, "Shouldn't you be at work? Like, it's Sunday."
Get off my back.
Yeah. And it's, I tell it, it's like, it's a laugh now, but at the time it was frustrating because I knew that I wasn't really there as much as I should be, and it was just the way that the schedule worked. It wasn't really anything to be done about, and so there was always a bit of a distance, and then if you try to get closer, if that's your goal going into a conversation, it's not going to work.
Right, it has to happen naturally. Yeah,
kids can see through bullshit. They have an incredible ability to see through bullshit. They think that theirs is impenetrable, and it's not. But but they can see through it. And so you don't want to do that. But I wanted to. I things had been sort of like a group comment. I'd say "I love you all" or something, but I was sort of stilted. It never felt natural to me. And I wanted to make a point of that because I told Sam the day she started college. I made a point of talking about your starting college time and making certain I said that. After Scotty, I wanted to make a point of telling all the others, and I was trying to figure out how to say it to Cameron first, how to approach it, and then Sarah crossed me up by saying it to me first. So we had a bit of a talk on that, and I said, I never told Scotty I loved him, and now I never can. And he's like, he knew. I think he knew. He would have known. And we had that talk, and then later, not much later, like half an hour, I'm sitting at the kitchen table, and Cameron downstairs, and I like to sit. We talked for like half an hour. Cameron and I have always been a bit more, had like a rougher relationship. And, sometimes I think he's being ridiculous. Other times I should have a lot more patience, or I'm frustrated and I'm not dealing with things the way I need to. I'm not going to claim that I'm I'm right and everyone else is wrong, because it's a two-way street. And I've certainly had my share of screw-ups. Yeah. But we talked, probably one of the best talks we've ever had. We talked for like half an hour or so, and made the point, and I made a point of telling Cameron I love him, and I said, explain, I never had the chance to, I had the chance, I never did say to Scotty, and Cameron's like, I think he understood. I'm pretty sure that he would have known, and I sort of laughed and said, Sarah said the same thing. And we talked about a couple of things. I told Jen after the service, because there was the only chance I really had, talked to her alone to say it. So, and I try to be a bit more open with it, because it's you always think there's going to be another time, another chance to see him again. There'll always be the next time, and there always is a next time, until inevitably there's that one terrible time when there's not.
Yeah.
And you never know it's coming. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know it reminds me of me and my dad. Me and my dad never used to exchange "I love yous," and it's the same general sort of dynamic that you're describing. For us, it wasn't a death. It was when my parents split up, which me and my brother were both adults, and and we were both out of the house, and it wasn't traumatic at all for me, because I was completely away from it. But Dad took it really hard, and was in a really low emotional place, like, for a long time afterwards. And ever since then, every phone conversation we have ends with exchanging "I love you," or when we see each other in person. It's always and we've done it every time since then. And we it's not that we had never done it before, but it wasn't a regular thing. And it's unfortunate how sometimes, like, something really bad has to happen before you realize, I should probably do this all the time. I should let people that I care about know that I care about them. Because you're right. Because you always think, well, I'm sure they know, or I'll catch them next time, or and you don't always get that shot.
Sung Ansel, my modest master, his brother. You never know.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was interesting, because after having that long talk with Cameron, I mean, apparently the way that we don't get along is a lot more legendary in the family than I ever realized.
Oh, really?
Because I the next day or two, I guess it was the next day, because this was like, we got the news on Monday, so I guess it was talking on Tuesday morning, and mentioned that we had Sam on the phone, and Christian said, he and Cameron talked for like half an hour last night, and Sam went, "He and Cameron?" Like, in complete disbelief. And then later we're talking to Kristen's mother, and and she told him that, and her mother actually gasped.
Wow, that's a little insulting. Hey, it's not a miracle.
No, maybe it is.
Maybe. I mean, it's a good thing. It's a wonderful thing.
So I'm trying to be more open, more approachable, because it's a change of perspective. Things that would drive me nuts before, I'm just apathetic toward now. And it's more of I mean, that's not necessarily healthy to not care, but it's like not caring about the wrong things, Like, if the dishwasher is supposed to be emptied and it doesn't get emptied for like 4 days, I mean, it's frustrating, but it used to be I get like really annoyed and upset, and could you maybe take care of this sometime? And now it's like just whatever, it's a dishwasher.
It's reshuffling your priorities.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like, these things should get done, these things shouldn't, or certain things shouldn't happen a certain way, but it's not something that I feel I should be as emotional about as I was. And then I feel like an idiot for being as emotional about it for as long as I was in the past. Because it's like, that wasn't helping,
Yeah. But you can't help it. I mean, when you realize that maybe you should do things differently, or something happens to sort of put your life into a different perspective, and you change, like that's good. But you can't necessarily blame yourself for getting hung up on things that weren't that important, because it's only natural. I mean, my grandmother is a huge worrier. Like, she worries about everything. She worries about people. She worries about what's going to happen. Like, she's very
there are anxiety issues in the family, so I know how that goes.
Yeah, she worries a lot. And my grandfather, her husband, was not like that at all, or at least not that he ever showed. Maybe he was privately, and he always used to say, if I owe somebody $5,000 and it's due tomorrow, and I know I don't have it, I might as well get a good night's sleep tonight. because staying up all night worrying about it isn't going to change the reality. And that makes sense. Like, that's a very reasonable attitude. But if you don't happen to feel that way, it doesn't do you any good. You know, like if you're worried, you're going to worry. You can't just talk yourself out of it. And if, you know,
So I'm always trying to do better, and hopefully this will help. You know, to
yeah,
it's a terrible thing that happens, but if you can try to find something good or do some improvement or something better out of it, then that's,
yeah,
take what you can get. Because I don't want to have an antagonistic relationship with Cameron the rest of my life. I don't want to be upset about these things. I don't want to be as distant. And, I look back because
yeah,
I tell Kristen I love her all the time. I tell her multiple times a day, and then I'm like, why didn't I ever tell the kids? Why don't I say it? And it's like,
yeah.
because of the distance, because it might be awkward or something. Everything I think of is just so ridiculous in
Yeah.
retrospect,
It suddenly doesn't seem like it should have been that it should have been enough to get in the way.
It should have been said
Yeah.
years ago, years and
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
But it's when we moved in here, I mean, again, Jen was also, but Scotty was in 8th grade and Cameron was in 2nd, and now Cameron's going into 10th. This year was 9th grade, and Sarah's in 11th, and Sam's in college. So they're growing up, and
Yeah.
eventually they'll be out of the house completely, all of them. And it's something. It's going to be an empty nest thing when that happens.
Oh, of course.
And then we'll try to get a smaller house at that point. But it's seeing them grow up, because it's maybe you don't, but kids reach their teenage years and they start realizing that they're growing up, and they start acting like adults in some ways. So they start expecting to be treated like adults in every way, because they don't understand that there's the responsibilities that come with it. And you don't entirely appreciate how there's the dichotomy. Teenagers are adults in some ways and still very much young kids in others.
Yeah.
And you don't realize it until you see it in certain ways. So, something that came back to me with everything that's gone on, remembering Scotty, we hadn't been in the house like a couple of days, and I guess he used the shower for the first time. And he came, I'm sitting there and Kristen's sitting there, and he comes up and he reports more to Kristen than me, because I'm still the weird newcomer.
Right.
The shower curtain doesn't work.
The shower curtain doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Yeah, that's sort of our reaction. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, was it torn? Like, no. Is there a hole in it? No, it doesn't work. Well, like, did you not put up the inner one? Yeah, the two, right? It's like, no, it's there. It just doesn't work. Like, okay, we got it.
Can you describe the function that it's not performing?
And you have like the decorative one that goes outside, and then the one that
like the plastic
waterproof.
Yeah.
They were both draped outside the tub when they were put on,
so it doesn't work.
The shower curtain doesn't work. It never occurred to him that the problem was that it wasn't draining into the tub; it was draining onto the floor outside. And then,
right.
Never occurred to him. At that age, it's one of those things. That's the kid side coming through.
I did what I was supposed to do. I pulled the curtain shut. It should work.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And it's exasperating at the time. And they sort of laugh because it's but that's one of those things. It's like not an adult yet, but still working on it.
Yeah.
It's just the shower curtain doesn't work. I never would have thought of that. And there are other memories that come back. I remember for the 4th of July, the first 4th of July that we were here, and Jen was in, so we had all the kids here. We had never seen such an incredible display of fireworks from everyone in every direction. It sounded like a war movie, more so than it was crazy. The people who are uphill behind us were shooting off fireworks that were going off over our house and landing on our roof and on the power lines out front, and we're kind of nervous about that because the power lines are like 50 years old, old style. We went up, we talked to them, said, "You're concerned about this?" They said, okay. They aimed it, changed the angle. Now it was coming down in the yard and coming into the huge pine tree in the back with all the dry deadwood in the core.
That's not better. Hey.
Not really, no. And things were going up everywhere. We were actually making spontaneous emergency plans. If something catches fire, You're going to turn the water on. You're going to get the hose. You're going to call the fire. We actually had making plans just in case.
That's important.
And it was like that for a year or two. And then we, the 4th of July, I guess the second one, we were here probably. We had a gathering about a week and a half later. We were having our Bastille Day celebrations. Pierre's idea, but he didn't show up. Go figure. It was around the 14th. It might not have been exact. It was around then.
Yeah.
And when it got dark, Scotty and his friend Jody's kid were actually had disassembled a firework or two. They were talking about playing with gunpowder. Scotty had burned himself a little bit at one point. But if you're using the term "playing with gunpowder," you probably shouldn't be allowed to have access to it.
Yeah, right.
But at the same time, at one point, we nearly set the arborvitae on fire. At one point, and firework went off into it. One went into the enclosed area out back that we call the Tiki Lounge. There's a plastic firework hit into that. But after dark, we were playing around. We were trying to use fireworks. Some of the ones that we had left over, and Kevin, I think he had like a Roman something was going to shoot off, and he lit it. He did this, and he's waiting, and nothing happens. He goes, yeah, because this one doesn't work. As he held his hand out like this, it suddenly shot off and fired into the side of the neighbor's shed.
Oh my God!
And then I was telling Shannon about the people upstairs, how they're always raining the firework embers on our house, and he took and shot it's a fire, boom, right over their house, and all the embers were landing on their porch and running down their roof into the rain gutter and onto their patio. He's like that? Like, yeah, like that.
Yeah,
okay.
just like that.
I went in to use a couple minutes later. I went to use the bathroom, and apparently, while I was in there, the police came and told us to knock it off with the fireworks. But we didn't have the same issues with the fireworks raining down on our house after that in future years. Whether that was directly because of that or not, I'm not sure. So I can criticize Scotty for using the phrase "playing with gunpowder," but I can't claim that we were setting a sterling example ourselves when it comes to fireworks responsibility.
Right? Where would we have gotten that idea?
Yeah. So it's just these are the things that you remember afterwards, and I try to do better. Don't always succeed, but it's always trying to improve, trying to be a better person, better parent, better authority figure, and understanding that the best parent is not the kid's best friend, but still being approachable and trying to walk that line, and trying to gain the respect. Because what I said about not being able to change, wanting to learn the lie of the land, I could, if something frustrated me, I could say, "You're not okay. Tomorrow, no television. That's your punishment." But then I go to work, and Kristen's the one who has to enforce that, and live with the fallout and the frustration and that's not fair to her either. So we stayed on the same. We communicated. We stayed on the same page, and so trying not. Because her other option is say, "Hell, that I can't deal with this. Watch the TV," which undercuts me, which is something that we didn't want to have happen either.
Right.
We had one of those. We were very careful with after a very firm good night from Kristen. This is it for the night, and not coming back up. And then kid wandering out of the room, and standing. And I was the one who was in between. And at one point, they called down, and Kristen started coming up the stairs, and I said, "Say what's happening," and said, "Oh, okay, good night, love you," and back downstairs, because she knew this was took an hour and a half, but I did win the Battle of Wills with a stubborn 7-year-old. But it was important, because if that didn't happen, then my authority, my position as an authority figure, somebody has to be respected, is sliced off at the knees.
Right.
So we were aware of this from the beginning and trying to work on these things, and I like to think we did an okay job. Probably not as good a job as we could have, but whoever does, Well,
of course you make mistakes, and I mean, because you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, you make the best choice you can based on your best guess of what the result will be, but you don't know. If you know how they're going to react badly if I say this, then you say something else, but you don't know.
Exactly. It's like it's always a learning curve, and I didn't want to be as distant as a parental figure as I turned out to be. Again, it happened sort of organically, but I wanted, because, you know, just one of the things that came up sort of leading by example, just by being a good person.
Yeah.
That gets recognized. Kids can see that. And there is some truth to that. But at the same time, I was worried that that was an excuse for doing a more hands-off thing. It's like, well, I don't have to go in and address this. I'm leading by example over here, passively. I don't have to do active work. And that was
they should have been paying closer attention.
Yeah, you don't want to turn that into an excuse.
Yeah.
For not doing what needed to do. And I'd like to think I did an okay job. You know, but you know, you always wonder if you could have done more. You know, that's one of the things. You know, when Scotty dies, when somebody dies, you go into the self-recrimination mode.
Yeah.
Could I have tried harder? Could I have done more? Could I have made a difference? And the answer to those three questions are absolutely yes, and probably not. No.
Yeah,
you can always do more. You can always try harder. We could have let them move in with us. We could have thrown more money at them to try to help them through the problems.
Right.
Would any of that have made a goddamn bit of difference at that point? Probably not.
There's a certain part of it that was always going to be out of your hands because it's not your life. You're not the one who has to make the most important choices. Yeah.
That's one of the curses of being a parent, that the job of every parent is to make themselves obsolete.
Yeah.
A parent is trying to raise a child who doesn't need a parent, and who might appreciate having a parent, is glad to have them, and is willing to lean on them, but doesn't absolutely need them.
Yeah. You know, I remember something when you're talking about, you know, going back and sort of recriminating over you could have done better or you could have been closer to them. And I've never been a parent, so I don't know what that's like firsthand. But I remember a conversation I had with my dad a long time ago when I was a teenager, and he and I had been fighting about something that I don't even remember. Like, I don't even remember what it was about.
Yeah, the fights that seem so important at the time, you don't even remember what they're about later on.
But I think I was 15, maybe, something like that, in that neighborhood. And he said to me, and because the fight, it got to the point where like the anger subsided, and then it was just sort of like trying to reach an understanding, and you know, and my dad, who is a big, loud, impressive, intimidating guy, and didn't usually get like soft and sensitive and vulnerable, you know, but he said, you know, I don't always know what to do as a father, because I've never been one of those before. And at the time I thought, you've been one for 15 years. But now I think back and I realize what he was saying was, you know, even though I've been a father for 15 years at that point, I still don't feel like I'm sure what the right thing to do is.
Oh,
because
that never ends.
Yeah, because it's never the same thing, and because you're dealing with another person. You're not, you know, it's not like you're just working a press, you know, at a factory and you know exactly what's going to happen. You know, you're dealing with another person.
I'll just manufacture a new kid. There we go.
Yeah. And now I have a lot more sympathy for that, you know, because I realize that, you no matter how many years you've been doing it, no matter how much experience you have, you know, you reach a certain place where you're more comfortable with the role in general, but you know, it still doesn't, you still never feel like, oh, I've got this. You know, I know how to handle, I know what the right thing to do here is. Come here, I got this. You know, you never feel that way because you never have that certainty. And, you know, so, and that was him talking about his kids that he had known from the very beginning. Like, I imagine in someone in your position where you came in sort of in the middle, it's even more amplified, you know?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, there were existing status quos, there were existing standards that I didn't know, and I had to learn. And things that, you know, never would have flown in my house were par for the course, and, you know, and this one vice versa. And so it's learning a new dynamic and integrating into it without, you know, just trying to come in and run roughshod over everyone's sensibilities and you can't come in and be the tyrant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So but I try to do better. It's parenting is this weird thing where you're not the only source of input for your kids. They're taking information from everywhere. So when things turn out well, you're not sure how large a hand you had in and how much was other. And when things go bad, you don't know what you could have done more. It's sort of like being afraid to take credit for the good things, but then taking the blame for the bad as well.
Yeah.
And it's, I wouldn't, as frustrating as it can be and as painful as it can be sometimes, it's still wonderful and wondrous, and I wouldn't trade it.
Oh, I'm sure you wouldn't. Yeah, of course.
They're great kids.
Yeah.
There are times when you just want to bang your head off a wall and scream, but they're still great kids.
Yeah.
And it helps to be accepted by them, and it helps in a way to also be accepted by Jen, who I've never lived under the same roof as, and I've never been in a position of being father, and to be accepted that way, it matters. It does help.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Because and because not only because it's somebody who's a bit outside of it and is able to see it differently, but also because it's an adult opinion at that point. When they're still kids, and and they're all at the age now. It's like, don't call me kids. I'm not a kid. It's like, you're always kids.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll be 90. You'll be 70. And you'll still be kids.
Yeah. Hey, you're fucking kid. Who you think you're talking to?
So that's, and then this is the nightmare of parenting.
Yeah. Oh, it's the one that you hope never ever happens. Yeah. Yeah.
But hopefully, I don't know, because I've had very little experience with death in my life. I mean, my great grandmother died in her 80s when I was in 6th grade, so that was really my first real experience of it. I've attended a couple other wakes. The only other funeral that I think I'd attend was for my my Aunt Ruth, who is not literally an aunt, like my grandmother's sister. I did a video about that one after the service, and some reflections and feelings on that. But I haven't had a lot of experience with people who are really close to me passing away. I mean, for the most part, most of the people attending the family gatherings now are the same ones who were attending 40 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got a lot of relatives who are in their upper 70s or 80s or 90s, and the somewhat tactless phrase that I've been known to use is that at some point, relatives are going to start losing family like Weekend Guests in a Murder Mystery, because they're all at this age where it's going to domino.
Yeah,
and so, but I don't have a lot of experience with it, and I know that there's no clear answer. So, if there's anxiety about death, about from the kids about what's going to happen, who's going to how do you deal with it? I don't have answers for them. I can't say this is this is how you handle it. It can come out of nowhere, and there's no comfort in that.
Well, there's not.
You can't tell a kid if they're worried about people dying, about losing people. You can't spend every day of your life worrying about it, even though it's an extremely minuscule risk, but it is a risk every day every time you do something. Any day could be your last, but that's not comforting.
Yeah, no. But
you feel like an idiot saying, just ignore it, don't worry about it. Even though that's kind of the approach you have to take.
That's the only thing practically speaking, that's the only thing you can do. That's the only thing that works for me. I mean, I remember when I remember vividly when I learned that death was a thing, right? I remember the conversation with my mother, and because what had happened was a family friend of ours had died, and I always remembered him. His name was King. And he had died. He was in his 70s, I think, and he just died of natural causes. And I remembered him, like I was still very young, but I remember, he would hang out with my dad, and I remember he would like pick me up and stuff like that. And I remembered him. I still remember him. And he died. And I said, and something clicked in my head, And I said to my mom one day after he died, my mom was in the kitchen doing dishes or something. And I said, so does everybody die? and and she was like, oh shit, here we go. You know, like, and to her credit, because my mom came from a very religious family, and I got most of the God stuff that I got when I was growing up from her, or from her side of the family. But to her credit, she didn't lay the God thing on me to try to comfort me. She just said, you know, yeah, everybody dies eventually. You know, it's a natural thing. It happens to everybody, and it'll happen to me, and it'll happen to Dad, and it'll happen to you someday. And of course, I was like really upset, because I was like, what the hell is this? Wait a minute. I didn't sign up for this. And
who's responsible for this? Who designed this? This is a very bad idea.
And exactly. And she told me,
you mean we stay dead?
Yeah, like what? So life is temporary, but death is permanent? Who worked that out?
What is that quote about? It's not dying that scares you, it's a part about staying dead that scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, exactly. That's the part I object to. You know, I'll go to the dentist as long as I can come home afterwards. I accept that it's a necessity. But yeah, she said, because I was really upset. I was crying, and she said, oh, honey, that's not going to happen for a very, very long time. And that's still really the only comfort that there is.
Yeah.
Of course, the older you get, the less and less time there is. But all you can really do is say, it hasn't happened yet. You know, I'm still here. I still have things to do. I still have things here that mean something to me. I still have people that I care about. I still have work that means something to me. And I'm just going to focus on that. And I'm not going to worry about what's going to happen eventually, because if I did, I'd never get anything done. I'd never accomplish anything. My life would be meaningless. I would just be unending grief and despair, and, you know, and getting upset at something that I have absolutely no power to change.
Right.
You know, and that sucks. And there are times when that's not any comfort at all. But that's well, it's sort of the predicament that we're in. Like, what else are we supposed to do? We can make up stories and say, oh, but you know, death isn't really death. And okay, if that helps you, then do that. But it never helped me.
It helps a lot of people, but
yeah.
You know what? I found I don't have a problem with I'm praying for you or you're in my prayers. It's you should pray that I have a problem with.
Yeah, don't tell me. Yeah,
don't tell me
what
how
I'm
to
supposed
grieve.
to do. Yeah, yeah.
That we all grieve in our own way. If that works for you, great. Don't tell me it's what I need to do, because it's not. That's yeah. It's because I think that's why some people do turn to that, though, because it's, you know how the thing about, you know, maybe it didn't happen, maybe they're wrong, maybe they're mistaken, yeah. Maybe they're not. That's the religious belief is essentially that in the long term.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're not really dead. Yeah.
Saying maybe this was mistaken, the report is wrong, Scotty's still alive, that would be trying to punt it down the line. It makes it worse when it happens. Yeah. The religion, you'll see them again. There's a plan. They'll be in heaven, because no one ever goes to hell. It's always heaven.
Oh, sure. Of course. Or, you know what? Yeah, maybe he is in hell, but you're going too, sweetie. So either one way or the other, you'll see him again. Don't worry. But we'll have a lot to talk about.
It's punting it down the line. Yeah. Because when you say maybe that's the truth, that's a way to not deal with it. Saying he's in heaven is a way to punt down the line all the way to death and never having to deal with it at all.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I don't find comfort in that.
Well, no, me neither. Because I mean, I guess if you sincerely believe it, like if you truly, truly believe it, then of course it's a comfort. I never believed it. Like even when I was a kid, and because eventually, you know, my mom did tell me about, you know, well, there's heaven, and there's, you know, when you die, you go to heaven, and in heaven lasts forever. And I wanted to believe it for a really long time, and I tried really hard to believe it. But
I think I knew you first met you when you were in the tail ends of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I just, you know, deep down in my heart of hearts, I never believed it. And that's why it upset me. Like, that's why death upset me, because I knew that wasn't going to happen. I knew that when you died, that was it. And I had never been given any reason to believe anything else. Nothing else seemed plausible to me. Even before I was calling myself an atheist, I never believed that there was anything else. I always believed that death was the end. So people saying, oh, don't worry, they're in a better place, or don't worry, you'll see them again someday. Yeah, if you truly, truly believe that, then that's a wonderful comfort, I'm sure. But I never believed it. Even when I tried so hard to believe it, I never believed it.
I didn't try to believe even during this, but there were times
Yeah.
when I spent a lot of time saying it would be so comforting to be able to believe.
Oh,
because
yeah.
because it gives
course.
it gives the best possible answers to every aspect of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That death isn't really the end, that your friends and relatives are not really gone, that you will see them again, that there is a happy ending, that
that they're okay.
Yeah.
That they're okay. They're not here, they're somewhere else, they're okay.
And if you can truly believe that, you can truly believe that God has a plan for people and that it's not really a problem. But to people who don't believe that, saying that a 21-year-old who's getting his life back together, his death was God has a plan. Well, if that's God's plan, then fuck God's plan. You know, that's not.
Or could he let us in on it, maybe? Like, well, I'm sorry, no disrespect to you. Why am I hearing this from you? I mean, if you found out, who told you? Maybe they could tell me. Then it would seem I want to move a little bit up the chain of authority here. Yeah.
Dealing with death is not an easy thing, and simply turning to the easy answers, I guess that's a comfort. But I was not I spent some time during this last month actually envying people who I consider dense enough to be able to believe that, which is a judgmental way to go about it. And I really don't mean to be, disrespectful to other people,
right?
And their beliefs. Honestly, that's not what I'm going for. But the whole concept has always struck me as so ridiculous and so obviously manufactured. When I was struggling to come up with handling all of this, it's like being able to simply put it in that basket and put it aside and say it's dealt with would have been such a comfort and so much easier and so much less, so much less heartache, so much less pain. And in a way, I kind of envy being able to do that, even though I don't consider it a good way, because it's not really handling it at all. In many ways, I wish to some extent that I would have been able to believe that.
Yeah. Well, and there's another aspect of it too, which is there with religion comes ritual. And so there's a structure that comes before you, that is there, that you can sort of cling to, and that can be a comfort. The act of prayer, the act of having a funeral service and having it be organized in such a way, and saying words that sound important, that sound poetic, that sound meaningful, that put the death of your loved one into a larger context, that make it seem like it means something. That can be a comfort as well. And you can do that without being a believer. Like you can form your own rituals and do your own things, but when you approach it from a religious standpoint, that's already in place, and you have the comfort of sort of taking part in something that has been going on for thousands of years, and saying, now this is our ritual, this is how we mourn. And there's something about that continuity that I think helps a lot of people, whether you I know people who are for all practical purposes are atheists, but will still go to church for certain things because they want the ritual, because they want the experience of going through something that other people have gone through and feeling like they're a part of a larger thing. And I completely get that. I completely get that. And I think that would probably be a comfort to a lot of people as well. But like I said toward the beginning, like, to me, the only thing that ever helps me is just commiserating and talking with people, and sharing stories about the good times and that sort of thing. Right. Everything on top of it is just is just like a duty, just an obligation I have to get through.
Yeah, because that reminds me, with my Aunt Ruth's funeral, and I did the separate video about that. I was really put off by it because it was very much a ritualistic service. It was scripted. she was referred to as Sister Ruth, but basically it was a sister, your name here. There was nothing specific to her about it, because the previous one I'd been at had been for my great grandmother, and during the service, the father had was telling stories about her.
Yeah.
And mentioned like, I said something, and she goes, "Oh, you'll never let me forgive that or forget that," and everyone laughed because they recognized it. That was her. He got the intonation, everything right. It was a service about her. It was a celebration about her, and the one that was very ritualistic and so on. Maybe it's what she wanted. I was put off by it because it wasn't about her. It wasn't. It was about. In fact, at the end, I even commented about how the person thanked the president of the service for honoring the traditions and honoring the Sabbath and whatever it said.
Yeah.
But not for honoring Aunt Ruth.
Yeah.
That wasn't mentioned.
Yeah.
It was, and so I was put off by that, and again, maybe it's what she wanted, and more power to her if she wanted. I'm not saying that it was wrong for her. I'm saying it was wrong for me.
Yeah.
And I think that at the service that we had, some people were put off or scandalized by the fact that we did not go with the religious side of things. We went with why you should have a physicist speak at your funeral.
Right.
We didn't mention God or heaven or hell. I think some people were bothered by that, but tough, because that's not what we wanted, and we honestly don't believe that's what Scotty would have wanted.
Right. It's probably not what he would have wanted, which that does deserve some consideration. I mean, yeah.
I mean, the services that you have are for the living, not for the dead, but still, you try to... You
don't want to betray what the person you're grieving would have wanted.
Right.
Yeah, I remember I think the last funeral I attended was an uncle of my wife's, and it was at a church. It was like a church service. But it was weird from my experience, because I'm pretty sure we were the only non-believers there.
That can be very weird sometimes.
Yeah, I mean,
not just even with God, but just anytime you're in a situation where you realize that you're not on the same page as everyone else.
Yeah, but I just I'm very laid back about it. I'm just like, well, I'm here for my wife, and that's the reason I'm here. So I'm just going to sit here and be respectful. And the religious part of it, where the pastor got up and did his religious spiel, felt very much like what you were saying about Aunt Ruth's service, where it's like this could be applied to anybody, and the pastor of that church has this really off-putting quality of speaking to the congregation like he's talking to children. Like really like simplified sentence structure, and like he's telling you like a nursery rhyme or something, and it's really kind of condescending, especially when you see how old his congregation is. It's like, who are you talking to? There's no kids even here.
Thank you, Madam Umbridge.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what do you just talk like people? Just talk like adults. Yeah. But after he was done, then when like the brother got up and spoke, the kids got up and spoke about their dad who had died, and that was really powerful because that was real, and that was genuine, and there was something to that. It wasn't just rote, like we have come here to honor the memory of our brother, blah 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 blah. Like it's people telling story again, like telling most of the speakers were just hey, I remember 20 years ago when blah, blah, blah. And they're just telling us a personal story about something that they remember, that they recall doing with the deceased, and it was wonderful. I mean, it really felt like it was good.
It's a celebration of them as opposed to the scripted service, which I interpreted more as a celebration of the church.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like if that's what people need, if that's what you like, go do that. But
I understand what you're saying about the continuity of ritual and the solace in that, and that does make sense. That's something I hadn't really considered a whole lot previously.
Yeah,
so there is that, but it has to be right for the person. You can't it's not a one size fits all thing.
Yeah, exactly. If the ritual is meaningless to you, then you're not going to get much from it. Mm-hmm. If the ritual means something to you, then I'm sure it can be a tremendous comfort. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, you know, there's just no answers for this. You know, it's just you sort of have to find a way to pick up and move on, and everyone does it differently.
Yeah, and it takes time.
I mean, I'm still getting. Was it Tuesday? Because we were off Wednesday for the 4th, but it was either Tuesday or it was Thursday. I forget which. I was at work and I'm doing my job, and all of a sudden everything just hit me again, and I realized, okay, I need a break. I locked my computer and I went downstairs to outside, and I called Kristen and I said, I just needed to hear your voice.
Yeah.
And it's been almost a month, and it still hits the point where I have to take a moment for my job and step back and say, oh, I need to connect with family at some extent. You know?
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that I'm going to do a better job connecting in the future with the kids, with this, because, you know, I like to think I've done a good job, but I always know I can do better, and I don't want to fall back into old habits and become completely distant again. You know, it's you know, I don't want to make the same mistakes I've made in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, to an extent, you know, like it like we said already, I mean, it never really completely goes away, you know. I mean, I've never been in the situation that you're in, because obviously I've never had children. But you know, the people that I've lost that I was really, really close to, you know, that I was close enough that when they died, it really hurt. I mean, I think about them almost every day. You know, just incidentally, just, you know, the thought just comes into my head, and it doesn't hurt anymore. It's not painful. It doesn't, you know, derail my day, but it's a regular presence, you know, like it never really goes away. You get over it, you heal, but it's never the same, you know.
There comes a point where you remember them, and instead of mourning that they're gone, you celebrate that they were ever there at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Or that you remember the positives. It's like you accept they're gone, but you still look back on the positives with a smile.
Yeah, yeah. That's the place that you want to get to. Yeah, yeah.
And it's a long path.
Yeah, yeah. It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Some people never get there, and that's just that much more of a tragedy.
Yeah, because you can't force it, you know. You can't make somebody not miss somebody. I mean,
hopefully everyone deals with it eventually, because not dealing with it isn't really healthy in the long term. It works short term, but it'll get you in the end.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You have to stop eventually. You know, it catches up to you. Yeah.
And, you know, thankfully, I mean, the service, I mean, it went well. We all, a couple of us in the family, spoke a couple things. Jen crying and saying my baby brother has really stuck with me.
Yeah, of course.
That's been a memory that comes back pretty powerfully.
Yeah.
But, you know, we overall, it went smoothly. We didn't have any trouble with anyone. Thank goodness Michelle did not show up and Jody did not show up, because we were concerned about both of them.
Oh, yeah.
I actually volunteered to go up and go to Jody's house and specifically tell her she wasn't welcome. Which, like, no, don't do that. So I didn't. But the idea was floated, but thankfully she didn't. She did post stuff about, you know, on Facebook about how miss him, and I'm like a second mother to him, and, you know, glazing over the whole bit about how she threw him out of the house. Just a little thing about, you know, he had to leave or go a separate way or whatever, and didn't mention that she lied to get it to happen. Well, but if she had showed up, that might have gone bad. So thankfully she had the good grace to not do that. Yeah. She did not post it on Scotty's Facebook or tag him, because he had blocked her already, which, you know.
Oh, wow.
So, which after the whole thing about the never actually saying that, you know, he just blocked her. He was done with her at that point. So she didn't show up, and Michelle didn't show up. She's out in New York and is actually married and pregnant. So
oh, wow.
So I'm, you know, just they were the two people who I really wasn't happy with the thought of having to see, and neither of them came. So I was okay with that, and it avoided a potential scene, because we were worried if you know, certain, like, if Jody showed up and certain other people. I'm not going to go into detail, but
Right.
I'd heard about it. I understood it intellectually. I didn't really appreciate how terrible the reality is of people who didn't care, who want to be seen showing how much they cared.
Yeah.
Who want to put on a show and
Yeah.
to soak up the and be thought of positively. Because if someone like Jody had showed up, somebody who couldn't be bothered to care when he was alive, suddenly showing up and talking about how much he cared after he died, that's an issue, and that's frustrating, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
Offensive would be a better word. But there were a number of people who seemed to make it about themselves.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
There's always some of that.
Yeah, so that was. Thankfully, avoided that, and came through and without any major problems. Just trying to pick up the pieces and try to remember the best of him, and regretting times we didn't have. There are things that once we were on more stable ground with Scotty, once he was things I wanted to talk or share with him that won't happen now, and regret that. But you deal with it and you move on. It's all you can do.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not, it's no real comfort, but I say to people, because you can't help but think, of what you just said, like the times that you didn't have or the things that you didn't get to do. But you would feel that way no matter what.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you would feel that even if you had spent if you had seen each other every day, you would still feel like you can't help it. You can't help but think of the times that you could have had that you're not going to have now. Like there's no way around that,
So I'm not sure how much more I have to say on this. I went through the story. We've talked about death in general. I want to do a couple of, unless there's anything else anywhere else that you can think of that you want to go on this topic before.
There's nowhere else I want to go, man. I mean, if you've said what you needed to say, like,
I do want to do some thank yous here, just in general,
please.
For different people. So first, well, thank you first because for dealing with this, having this and posting the GoFundMe that we had a couple of times to try to help out with defraying costs on.
Which is linked in the description of this video too, by the way. It's still, I guess it's open for another week, maybe.
I'm not sure.
For like a month, but a GoFundMe to help with funeral costs and death-related expenses and all of that wonderful stuff that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It's linked in the description of the video. So if anybody watching wants to chip in a couple of bucks, I'm sure that would be tremendously appreciated.
So you've been a great help here, and then just doing this show, because I know this is not a comfortable topic. Like I said before we came on the air, I want to say I need to talk about death, so you have to too. That's not really how this works. That can be kind of personal, and so I appreciate your help on this.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I want to very much thank Anne for everything she did, for being at our house several days, for helping out, for keeping us grounded, for flying out to Utah before us.
Yeah.
On her own dime to help out and to try to make things easier for all of us when we were out there, even though she's known Scotty probably, I would possibly since, definitely since elementary school. I don't know how far back, but, so she was mourning too, and she did a great job. So I want to thank her very much for everything that she did. Steph is another family friend who we've known, has known the family, had known Kristen and the kids longer than I did. And, she came up, she helped out a bit and watched the guinea pigs for like 2 weeks while we were in Utah, and then before we go down there and get them. Keith had made a video to help with the GoFundMe, because Facebook's algorithms tend to promote videos more than other things. And so he made a brief video that Steve reshared once that was available. And that actually did reach more people. In fact, Jess had not heard about this until Keith's video, like 2 weeks after the fact.
Oh, wow.
Because Facebook's algorithm, despite the various things, decided that was not something that was important enough to share with all of my friends. because Facebook does stuff like that. So there are probably still people on my friends list who have no idea.
Right.
You know, which, what can you do? But, so, and Kristen's brother, Dan, had helped out, arranged and paid for the airfare for us to go there and back, which was, I am certain, quite expensive because we were doing it on only a couple days' notice, and the closer you get to the flight time, the more the prices skyrocket. And he had the tough situation because they were trying to sort things out and conference calls and speakerphone. And Kristen and Jen are comfortable with talking back and forth and floating ideas and making plans and then changing them as they're talking, coming up with new things. And I'm not as good at that, so I tend to back off. When it gets into these things, I stand back and let them sort them out, and when the dust settles, they'll let me know where everything landed. But Dan was in the middle of that, trying to arrange plane tickets while the plans were fluid and changing at the same time, and I don't think he appreciated that very much. But ultimately, we did get this sorted out, and he paid for the tickets, which, considering everything else we had, all the other expenses we had, really helped out. And otherwise, we might not have made it out there, and that would have just been, or one of us would have made it out to get the ashes, and that would have been it. And that was what we did instead, and meeting people and spending some time and having more time together to come to grips really helped. So. And they've helped out financially too. Her and Kristen's family have helped out quite a lot with a lot of the expenses and so on. So really want to thank that. The general obituary that we sent out did request, instead of flowers or food, we had donations to the Heron Project. It's HERREN, theheronproject.org. Which is a nonprofit that deals with awareness and treatment of substance abuse disorders. And a number of people have made donations to the Heron Project in Scotty's name. And we're not sure all of the ones who did, because you can make donations without them, then the information doesn't come back to us. Right. So we know for a fact they're donations that were because of our request, or because of our request in Scotty's memory, that we don't know about. But I want to thank everyone who made donations to the Heron Project for in the wake of everything that's happened here, because that is money that is going to an organization that is working for awareness and treatment, and that money can help other people avoid what we've gone through. Yeah. And then there's also the various people who have made the donations through the GoFundMe to help out, because this has been an expensive proposition. Unfortunately, that's the insult to injury on top of this, that you lose somebody and then you have to pay someone just to sort everything out. So we've received a number of donations on that, and I want to thank everyone for that as well. We're doing thank you cards this morning before the show. Kristen was writing out thank you cards, and I was helping with phrasing and things and signing some of them. So I mean, it's been a month and it's still going on, Yeah. Stuff still continues. So yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who deserve recognition that I'm forgetting here with the everything else that's going on, and trying to remember everyone else, because there's been a lot of help from family, from friends, from people all over, and just people who showed up at the people who showed up at the service who didn't have to, people, co-workers and friends I haven't seen in quite a while. I had somebody I graduated with who I haven't actually seen in person in years, who was in town and actually came in. So there was a lot of people who didn't have to be there, didn't have to send. I mean, I got a card from somebody I haven't worked with in like 3 or 4 years, but they sent a sympathy card, and it's just, it helps to know that people care and people are willing to help out, and people don't realize how many lives they matter to until it's too late. Not sure if Scotty realized how many people cared and how many people were going to show up, and how many people in Utah who he'd only been for less than a year were really pulling for him and cared about him, and were really devastated by his passing. He mattered to a lot of people. A lot of us, we don't realize how many lives we touch. That sounds kind of trite when I say it, but you don't realize how many people you matter to.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So I just wanted to toss out a couple of thank yous there for special notice for people and got above and beyond.
Yeah.
And it's not over. It's never over because you always have to deal with it, and you always have to remember. And we've still got to deal with expenses. We still have to sort out all the crap in the front room that was his and Michelle's.
Yeah.
Got a room full of stuff we got to sort out still. It's just. But talking about it helps, and
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so. I hope it's helped you. I hope if anybody has watched who has gone through something similar, I hope it's helped somebody else too. Because like, what else? What else can you do?
You have to know that it's you're not alone in this. A lot of people. We found a lot of people have had a lot of nightmare stories about addiction.
Yeah.
And some of them are terrible. And some people have been dealing with relatives of addiction for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
And how you deal with that. There have been support groups. Kristen has found one or two locally. The Heron Project has an online one that she participated in last time. So yeah, it helps to know that there are other people going through it, and there are other people who face the same things, and that there are, even though they can be hard to find, there are resources out there. There are people who understand. It's not easy, but there is help out there if you know where to look for it. Yeah, so we're not doing all the cheery stuff that we normally do, like 5 minutes of Trump, because after something like this, we don't want to move to the cheery topic of kids getting put in concentration camps, because
it's a little, yeah.
We're not switching over to any of that. We're not doing any of the regular stuff.
I suck at segues anyway. There's no way in hell I could manage a segue. And now let's talk about something else. No, this is a special show, and this is it. So yeah.
Yeah, and we just decided we go natural. I didn't know if we'd go 45 minutes or if we'd go much longer. In this case, it went much longer than normal. We're at like the 2.5 hour mark here. But
yeah,
we said what needed to be said, what we wanted to say, and we promise we'll be back to our irresponsible excuse for coverage next time.
Yeah, exactly.
Highly uninformed debate. Yeah.
The next show will also probably be unfunny, but we'll be trying to be. We'll be making jokes. We'll be trying to be funny. So you'll have that, like, well, at least they're making an effort. So
thank you all for watching. For the 3 or 4 of you who actually follow us closely, were wondering why there was no show last month. This is why, and this is a pretty good explanation. But thank you, and see you next month, I guess. I've noticed every time at the end we say next month, I have a calendar right here, and I always turn in, well, we'll do another show, and I look at the calendar like it's going to give me some insight. I'm like, next month sounds good. We do a monthly show. How does next month sound?
I think a month from now will be a good time to do the next episode of our monthly show. Yes, I agree.
Because I've noticed that I do that at the end of every show, and it's like I'm looking at it like I'm going to divine something, insight. But so I thank you for watching and for listening to us ramble, and for me vent a bit and talk about tragedy of this nature, and hope that other people got something out of it.
Yep, me too.
And on that note, just say sayonara, and that's it. And goodbye to Scotty.
Yep. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Yep. Thanks for watching.